The Pathfinder Volume 24, After Lunch with an Ex-FDA Reviewer, Insider Tips to Avoid Common Pitfalls in CMC Regulatory Submission.
In this audiocast, the chemistry, manufacturing, and control section of a pharmaceutical regulatory submission is critical, providing information on a drug's quality, safety, and efficacy. However, there are common pitfalls to avoid when authoring CMC submissions. Inadequate documentation, lack of regulatory knowledge, inconsistencies in data, inadequate risk assessment, and insufficient process understanding are some examples. In this autocast, as a CMC regulatory expert, I recommend that drug sponsors plan for the regulatory submission early in the drug development process, understand regulatory requirements, collaborate with regulatory experts, and conduct a thorough risk assessment to avoid these common pitfalls. Today I had lunch with a friend who happens to be an ex-FDA reviewer and a CMC expert, so I asked her some questions. Tell me about you and some of the pitfalls of sponsors make in authoring a quality Module 3.
Sure, I can certainly do that. As an ex-FDA reviewer and a CMC expert, my primary responsibility was to ensure the safety, quality, and efficacy of pharmaceutical products for human use. This involved reviewing the chemistry, manufacturing, and controls aspects of drug applications, including the manufacturing processes, formulation, and testing methods used to produce the drug product. My role as a CMC expert also involved evaluating the potential impact of any changes made to the manufacturing process or formulation on the safety, quality, and efficacy of the drug product. This included reviewing any deviations or nonconformances in the manufacturing process and assessing their potential impact on product quality. In addition, I worked closely with other FDA review divisions, including the Office of New Drugs and the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, to ensure that CMC data was properly integrated into the overall drug review process. This collaboration helped to ensure that the CMC data provided a complete and accurate picture of the drug product and its potential risks and benefits. The regulatory submission process for a pharmaceutical product is complex and time-consuming. The chemistry, manufacturing, and controls section of a regulatory submission is one of the most critical components, as it provides information on the drug's quality, safety, and efficacy. In this blog, we will discuss some common pitfalls that authors may encounter while preparing CMC submissions and provide tips on how to avoid them. One of the most common pitfalls in regulatory CMC submission authoring is inadequate documentation. CMC documentation should be detailed, comprehensive, and precise, leaving no room for ambiguity or misinterpretation. Incomplete or inaccurate documentation can lead to delays in the regulatory review process or rejection of the submission. To avoid this pitfall, authors should ensure that all aspects of the manufacturing process are fully documented, including raw materials, methods of manufacture, and analytical methods used to test the product. It is also essential to ensure that all supporting documentation, such as batch records and validation reports, are complete and accurate. Another common pitfall is a lack of regulatory knowledge. Authors should have a thorough understanding of the regulatory requirements for CMC submissions, including guidance documents and regulations. Failure to comply with regulatory requirements can result in rejection of the submission or delays in the approval process. To avoid this pitfall, authors should stay up to date with regulatory requirements and consult with regulatory experts as needed. It is also helpful to review previous successful submissions to gain insight into regulatory expectations. Inconsistencies in data can also be a common pitfall in CMC submissions. Inconsistencies may arise when data from different sources, such as manufacturing or testing, are not in agreement. This can lead to questions from the regulatory agency and delay in the approval process. To avoid this pitfall, authors should ensure that all data are consistent and accurate. It is also essential to document the source of the data and any assumptions or estimates made. An inadequate risk assessment is another common pitfall in CMC submissions. A comprehensive risk assessment should be conducted to identify potential risks associated with the manufacturing process and product quality. Failure to conduct a thorough risk assessment can lead to delays in the regulatory review process or rejection of the submission. To avoid this pitfall, authors should ensure that a comprehensive risk assessment is conducted and documented. The risk assessment should identify potential risks associated with each step of the manufacturing process, and strategies should be in place to mitigate those risks. Insufficient process understanding is a final common pitfall in CMC submissions. A thorough understanding of the manufacturing process is essential to ensure consistent product quality. Failure to understand the process can lead to inconsistent product quality and delays in the approval process. To avoid this pitfall, authors should ensure that they have a thorough understanding of the manufacturing process. This includes understanding the critical process parameters and the impact of process deviations on product quality. It is also essential to ensure that manufacturing personnel are adequately trained and that process controls are in place. Overall, as an ex-FDA reviewer and CMC expert, my goal was to ensure that the drugs brought to market were safe, effective, and of high quality, and that the manufacturing processes used to produce them were robust and reliable. In conclusion, regulatory CMC submission authoring can be a challenging task, and there are several common pitfalls to avoid. By ensuring adequate documentation, regulatory knowledge, data consistency, risk assessment, and process understanding, authors can increase the likelihood of a successful regulatory submission. Collaboration with regulatory experts can also be beneficial in ensuring that regulatory expectations are met and that any potential issues are identified and addressed.
What is the best CMC regulatory advice to give to a drug sponsor who is developing a drug during clinical trials?
As a CMC regulatory expert, the best advice I would give to a drug sponsor developing a drug during clinical trials is to ensure that they start planning for the regulatory submission early in the drug development process. Here are some specific recommendations. Understand regulatory requirements. It is critical to understand the regulatory requirements for CMC data early in the drug development process. The sponsor should review relevant guidance documents and engage with regulatory authorities to obtain guidance on what data will be required for the regulatory submission. Develop a comprehensive CMC plan. The sponsor should develop a comprehensive CMC plan that outlines the manufacturing process, the analytical methods used to test the product, and the controls in place to ensure consistent product quality. The plan should also include a risk assessment that identifies potential risks associated with the manufacturing process and strategies to mitigate those risks. Establish robust quality systems. The sponsor should establish robust quality systems early in the drug development process. This includes developing standard operating procedures for manufacturing, testing, and quality control, as well as establishing a quality control unit to ensure that product quality is consistently maintained. Ensure consistency of manufacturing process. Consistency of the manufacturing process is critical to ensure consistent product quality. The sponsor should conduct process validation studies to ensure that the manufacturing process is reproducible and that the product meets the required quality standards. Monitor product quality throughout clinical trials. The sponsor should establish a comprehensive product quality monitoring program throughout the clinical trial phase. This includes testing samples from each batch of the product to ensure that it meets the required quality standards. By following these recommendations, drug sponsors can increase the likelihood of a successful regulatory submission and approval of their drug. It is important to note that regulatory requirements may vary depending on the drug's indication, and it is essential to engage with regulatory authorities throughout the drug development process to ensure that regulatory requirements are met.
Thank you for listening to this audiocast. Are you an emerging biotech or established pharmaceutical company struggling to keep up with the ever-changing landscape of drug regulations? Look no further than INCRISI. We are the leading consulting group helping organizations comply with drug regulations through a comprehensive drug development model incorporating augmented intelligence and data analytics. Our industry experts can guide you through the complex world of compliance, making it more manageable than ever. With our Reimagining Regulatory Pathways services, we can help you design and implement best practices to streamline your operations and ensure you stay in line with current legislation. Our range of services covers regulatory drug development's technical and strategic aspects. Let us help you develop an overall strategy that accounts for all potential risks while still being able to meet your objectives. Visit our website at incrisi.com to learn more and get started on the path to regulatory compliance success.